Welcome everybody. My name is Vicky Hanna and I'm going to be delivering a new unit. This will be a combined recording for the full unit and the slides, and I'd like to walk you through our assessment tasks as well. So if you can't make it to live classes, this is going to be sufficient for you to be able to have an understanding. The slides that we provided you, there's also some additional information in your learner's guide. We'll just set up our screen. Here our space. Wonderful. So this unit is called Respond to Clients' Needs. We're going to have a really deep dive around our intake, our assessment, the privacy and confidentiality. We're going to talk about the psychache, how our client presents their mood, and how do we turn up for our clients. This is very much a practitioner unit, this one here. So while our micro skills, we hone them, we've got our protocols that we follow around our requirements for our policies and procedures. This one here is quite reflective around what kind of a worker am I going to be. So this recording is for diploma level. So both the diploma of youth work and diploma of AOD, diploma of mental health and diploma of community services. So we all work directly with our clients as well. And I wanted to be able to bring this to you in a capsule recording so you can keep this as part of your resource library. So the unit is CHCCCS016. So we're going to be running this for 3 weeks. There are 2 tasks. Task 1 is a quiz. Task 2 is role play, and there's 2 role plays in there, and we'll unpack what that looks like. Just before we get started, I wanted to do our acknowledgement to country. So in the spirit of reconciliation, Hayter Institute of Education acknowledges the traditional custodians of the country throughout Australia and their connection to land, sea and community. We recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the first inhabitants of this nation and the traditional custodians of the land on which we work, live and study. We express our gratitude for the sharing of this land, our sorrow for the personal, spiritual and cultural costs of that sharing. And I hope that we may move forward together in harmony and in the spirit of healing. We pay our respect to all First Nation people and acknowledge elders past, present and emerging. And I'd like to extend this to any of our learners who may be watching this recording, and of course any of our learners that attend any live classes. A little bit of housekeeping. So when you are in class and it's live, it's cameras on. We're a camera on college, so we don't do any smoking or vaping when we're on camera. Live classes are held weekly from 6 p.m. till 9 p.m. Melbourne time, and we work collaboratively in that space. So they aren't a chalk and talk where we take the slide and turn it one by one to duplicate what you've already got. But what we do is we will have a lot of sector workers, we will have a lot of people just starting, people who would like to work in the sector, and we have those rich conversations. We might work together in a breakout room, and we'll have some tasks and activities that are relevant to the unit that you're studying. We may also do some peer review, some mock role plays, and then we may actually deliver our role plays so that some of the learners may find that beneficial to do role plays in one of the class weeks that are assigned over for it. And I know that while this is the very first week, we are definitely going to start doing role plays in week 2 and week 3, because this is a unit that by week 1, I would expect that you will have task 1 completed. So we expect and do run a very respectful, culturally appropriate live class. We act as if we're colleagues already in the workplace, and we bring the sector into that space. A unique point of difference with Hayter is that every single trainer is a sector worker, a current sector worker, and we can do this because we are a night class college. So take your breaks in between be mindful of how you look after yourself while you're studying. A diploma level is definitely 15 to 20 hours a week, and that can include watching the recordings, going into your porthole, going through your learner's guide, and then doing some research around that as well, and then just capturing that evidence to support your work you do in your written. So you have assessments with this. So for this one, you'll notice that there's 3, but the task 3 is a placement project. So when you go into placement, you'll do that one. In your portal, though, you should see task 1, written questions, and then task 2 of 3 in total. So the T stands for task, are your role plays. And there's one client, Erica, and then there's 2 parts to Erica. So you're going to really do that responding to Erica's needs, because that's what this unit is about. And then also, as we're getting towards the end of that progressive case plan that we're doing with Erica, we're going to talk about that client. So week 1, we definitely cover our thoughts around that, what's our own style when we do our privacy and confidentiality intake, how we make sure that we've got consent, and what is informed consent, what that's like. And then what are we observing when a client comes in, just from their body language, and also what are they observing in us as well. So leave task 3 until you're ready and in your work placement. That's when that one will come in. They're your assessments. So week 1 is an overview, respond to clients' needs, how do clients present, their mood, how do we present, our client observes us, how do clients present their psyche. So what's that energy level they come in with? Are they really heightened or hyper? Are they really flat and low, hypo? And our role about how do we regulate ourselves so that our clients can be regulated and find their center. Week 2 also will have some key learnings around that, some more around our intentional interviewing questions. How do we do the risk assessment, the low, medium and high? What barriers are there, known and unknown? What's the capacity of somebody to be able to understand what we're discussing? And so what's seen and what's yet unseen? And then what are some of the presentation cues? What are we looking for? What are we watching for? Many of our clients may not be able to put into words what they're feeling. So this is where your practitioner skills come in, and how we respond to our clients' needs, and then make sure that we're looking after ourselves as well. So in week 3, definitely role plays, but we can start those in week 2. So Erica is the client, so there's one role play, and then Erica leaves the service. So the role play follows on, the role play 2 follows on from role play 1. So when you go in and open up task 2, you'll see both of Erica's. You need to do the first one first, and then of course you do role play number 2 after you've completed, and follow those instructions, which are in your portal. So this is the time of the year where we actually ask for trainer feedback. And we encourage you, if you are enjoying your classes, make sure that you put your trainer's name in there and give them some feedback. Let us know which parts of the classes and the class culture that you enjoy, and the delivery of the content, and what you value most of all. We're going to be asking our learners in our classes to give us that feedback as well. And we do take a lot of feedback, and mostly we'll modify our classes or change a way that we do that. Probably one of the most significant things that we have done is to give opportunity to do role plays in our live classes. I guess too, that came from our learner community. we know how busy you are, and if you take the time to come to classes, then we wanted to modify and make sure that we were meeting your expectations. So if you're happy with your trainers, depending on who your trainer is and you're watching this recording, then please leave them some feedback, 5-star positive review. If you found their assistance really helpful, it would be really appreciated to give them a shout out. And we'd love to celebrate that with them as well and with you. You can click on this link, which will come through, or you can put this into your portal. And then, of course, the trainers will drop that into their chat so that it can be a live link for you as well. So in session 1, there are 2 sessions worth of slides, but it will expand over week 1 and week 2. You can watch all of this in one full session if you want to. Depending on, I like 20-minute bites, but what's your study style as well? So find yourself comfortable there. This unit, we have a look at interpersonal relationships. What are those healthy professional boundaries? And then how do we communicate with our language, depending on the culture? And how do we pitch it to meet what our client's ability to understand, whether it's a differing ability, whether it's their cognitive levels, whether their EQ, their emotional quotient, to be able to take that in. What are some of the other things we're going to reflect upon, whether it's trauma or culture or gender, level of education, their socioeconomic status, which can be, if someone's living in poverty, they're presenting in a very low flat, and we need to be able to do that risk assessment around them. So knowing that you're in a caring, compassionate industry, we need to be very in tune with what's happening. Not so much that we wear our client's mood as an imprint. And so I do want to keep that lens. So this unit, to make sure that you're caring for yourself as a worker. In a day, it is not uncommon for you to see anywhere between 5 and 8 clients. Usually it's a 45-minute session and 15 minutes for note taking, and then the next appointment comes in. So oftentimes workers will shorten a lunch break to be able to get somebody in as well. But how do we manage those things for ourselves when a client's running 20 minutes late? It really just means that they'll have a shorter session this time, and then you'll cover that more the next time that you catch up. Otherwise, that your client is moving that boundary. So you need to manage that space for yourself, but there's no imbalance of power, sorry, that is really for you to manage, because you have responsibilities and you need to make sure that the person that is following, that you are okay before you jump into that space, because we never really know what a client is going to present with, so we have to be ready to respond to whatever that means. So we share information, and how we do that, we do the security around our file notes, the security around our conversation, making sure that it's a private space. In our live classes, we talk about all the different methods that we apply, why that might be important, and what does it look like if it goes well, and of course, what does it look like if it goes wrong. How we collect and analyse our client information, and then how do we do our indicators of harm. We're in our live classes, we have discussions around self-harming behaviours and what are some of those coping mechanisms that someone might have with their mental health, whatever it is that they're presenting with, that we are going to step into that space and support them with our case management. So we'll jump into a discussion in our classes and talk more about that and do our practitioner skills, bring that to life. So, but if you're watching this independently because your work schedule or your life schedule and you've got other priorities, live classes just may not line up for you. And we definitely do not want you to be delayed. However, speaking to the slides that you do have, unpacking that a little bit and walking beside you while you're doing your studies, I'm hoping that the recording will be able to assist you progress with that. So just read it, go through your learner's guide. It's an amazing tool. It's your resource. And then listen to some of the recordings as well. With these slides come some videos, and I want you to watch those. The very first one is about an intake. And it doesn't really get very far, but it is very much about the observation that I spoke about, and whether that would be your style, how you might feel if you were the client. And it's a role play, so it's not real, but it very much is what we are faced with when we're working with our clients. So even when you're doing your role plays, don't be in a rush to tick all those boxes. Just be really mindful of how did the client present and how long should we sit in that space. And sometimes if we're doing a role play, we have to make the assumption that you have engaged already. But this one has two parts to that. So the very first part, we will not be brushing over that. We will want to see your micro skills in the intake, the assessment, the engagement, and then helping that client be sitting in a regulated space, that window of tolerance. How we do that is we communicate, we pivot with change, and we want our clients to as well, because it's a change for them to have a new worker. And then empower, which making sure that there is shared discussion. It's a collaborative process, and our clients don't come in for advice, but we might help them put some options in front of them. And then what might that look like in our crossroads, and help them explore what could be the positives that would come out of a decision, and maybe some barriers, and then see if that would be an option that they could take and explore it. We may refer them to another professional as part of their plan. However, that doesn't mean that that will be a good fit either. So at all times, this is about self-determination, and then pausing in that moment to establish trust with our client rather than rush them through or read the scenario for the role play and just go, oh, I've got about 5 things I could advise here. So I want you to have a really good think about taming that advice monster, and then just getting comfortable, being uncomfortable in some silences. So whoever plays the client for you in this needs to be a peer from your class, or if you are a sector worker, it could be a colleague from work. Unless family and friends can really get into that authentic role of the client, of Erica for this one, then I strongly suggest that you go to peers for this and use our Discord app and just say, hey, is there anybody else out there that's looking to do task 2 of CHCCCS016 and play the role of Erica for you? And if you do, then you could swap and you could both play that role for each other. You need to be sitting in the chair so that you know what it feels like with a different learner, pull you out of that mood or bring you up or lift you up into that regulator space. Or if you're hypo, to just help you find a safety in that session. There's a video for you to watch. That is an intake, and then it doesn't get to assessment. It just gets to, let's get familiar with each other and the space where you're going to come in each week. It does talk about what the role play is about. So just, I want to let you know that it could be triggering. It is a very sensitive topic. She's going in and she's speaking to a counsellor for sexual assault. So be mindful of that. When you watch that, make sure that your mood, how you present, you're in a fairly solid space. I am mindful that even though we may not have a lived experience, some of the topics that we work with in the sector can be really triggering, and we can be experiencing vicarious trauma, story after story after story, and it can sneak up on us. So we put in healthy professional boundaries around that, and know what our own limitations are. That's one, how we're feeling and traveling, and two, within the scope of our role. It could be outside our position description. It could be outside of what the service is going to be able to deliver. And it could mean that we'll walk beside a client to find a more suitable service. And we're not trying to move them off. We are still going to be their lead worker, but we may facilitate some of those things for them if that's what they would like. You'll work that out with your client. They're the expert in what their needs are, even if that takes time to get there. But they won't work with us if they don't trust us, and we can't build trust unless we are consistent in putting in our boundaries, our rights and our responsibilities, and acknowledging their rights and their responsibilities and working within those professional frameworks. So no line crossing, no blurring, no having personal relationships with our clients. And then we facilitate how that relationship is. So it's a professional relationship and we can be friendly, but we are not our clients' friends. And if you live like I do in a regional area, then even if I have seen a client, it's a hi from a local kind of a thing, but I would never stop and have a conversation with a client about something that belongs in a private setting. And we don't even talk about our client's name when we're doing our own case conferencing. At my workplace, we make sure that it is client and the client's ID, or the most we might identify is like I've got a male that 17 or a female that's 23, has 2 children under the age of 5. So that would be how we would refer to our client. If you get into the practice of that, you will have really good professional boundaries around their privacy. And we are strong believers in nothing about me without me. So unless the client is there and they're the ones that's telling their story, it is not our role to do that. Even when we're doing a referral, we have spoken with our client about what that might be. So if it's with a GP trying to get an appointment, and then we agree on just how much we might, just to give the GP heads up. However, it's up to the client, the relationship they have with that next person, and how much they decide that they want to share. They have all of that ownership over their identity. And what they say is, really, I don't need to know what happened to a client to be able to work with them. If they never tell me, and I just know that they're looking for support, I just need to be able to find out what would support sound like for you? What would support look like for you? What might support feel like for you? That's really my role. So I can work with someone for a decade and they'll say, one day I might tell you what happened to me, but that's never what I need. What I really need is to have that connection and to be really respectful of the client's psyche and how they're presenting and how I respond to that. So how you can prevent that crossing of the line, be aware, have good understanding and realization of yourself. So do we put on a different hat in this role? Absolutely. We wear many hats. And for some people, they'll be different with you when they're in a session than what they are in their private life. And so that is a natural boundary, but making sure that we are very clear on what our relationship is like. That all happens at our intake. So my role is I'm the case manager. I'm going to be working with you today at First Access, which is your simulated workplace environment. We have quite a lot of different services, and the one that you and I are in at the moment is around community support, and I am the youth worker case manager in this space. So if I'm working with a young person, and a young person is 12 to 24 years of age, I will speak to a 12-year-old differently to what I would speak to a 24-year-old. And that's about me responding to their needs. But it's also about, while I might adjust or pivot how I do my approach, my boundary, healthy boundary, remains constant. So we have a duty of care around workplace health and safety, and in every state and territory, workplace health and safety includes psychological safety. Victoria is the only state that still has that law pending, but it's definitely there. But otherwise, it already is law for psychological safety under the workplace health and safety legislation, and that's measurable. So we have common law, that's where your legal and ethical framework will sit. And then what are our guidelines within community services? And you'll explore what those are. What's your boundary? What is the scope of your role? What can we do and what can we not do? So we work ethically around rights, responsibilities, and our actions, our behaviours. And it's the rights of you and your client, responsibilities of you and your client, and the behaviour of you and your client. That's what working ethically means. Identifying concerns and needs. So we, especially with young people, we may work with behaviours of concern. But our role is, and the lens that we take is, well, what happened to you? What's our root cause here? We're not going to jump straight into that, but we will get there over a period of time. If our clients like working with us, we hope they come back and see us. But each session that we have needs to be a full session complete. So we start, we cover where they're comfortable, and we summarise what we actually did today. We use some strength-based feedback in there and some of that open-ended questions and that compassionate inquiry when we're actually in that space. We're not probing, we're not prompting, we're curious. We're curious out of care. And it's a non-judgmental space. So they're respectful, open-ended questions. We use our active listening skills, listening to understand, empathy, which is not sympathy. Empathy is, that sounds hard. And then trying to think what that must be like for that person and responding to those needs. That we are sensitive, even if we don't understand, and that we make sure that it's culturally safe. And culturally safe is in our language. It's in the pictures we have on the wall. Can't be what I can't see, especially for young people, because if they don't see some of these visual prompts when they're around, they may not have that role modeling at home, or they may not be experiencing that positive reinforcement at school. We as workers may be the very first, but this is a core unit for each of our diploma levels. And so it depends on who your target group is. So I'm looking through the lens of where I sit as a subject matter expert in youth work, but it doesn't end at 24. I could be working with intergenerational, where I've got a grandparent who is the kinship placement for a young person. So we have a primary client, and then we have our secondary and our tertiary clients, and we have our stakeholders. All of them, we need to make sure that we respond to their needs and those guidelines as well. So there's a lot of interpersonal relationships that we have when we're in the community sector. A class brainstorm is just, we'll bounce around ideas, often go into a breakout room, and it's great. It's a really good peer support, opening up that circle, having somebody to be able to establish relationship with. The strength in that, the strength in people sharing lived experiences in classes as well, is extremely powerful, because nobody can teach this if there is a lived experience or a shared story in that space. And every time we listen, every time someone shares a story, we're learning. And live classes give us that opportunity. So just when you see a slide like that come up, if you aren't able to attend classes, mostly it's around the discussion. What are the key learnings of the unit? And then what's some practical applications around that as well? We don't record breakout rooms. That's a private space where learners can speak freely as well. So how do we prioritise our goals? We need some information. We need to look at what options might be there with the choices that maybe someone is set to make while they're there. Sometimes we can have clients that are required to, that it's mandatory for them. So it's court ordered. So they can come in and it's like, I don't want to be here. But it can be an unexpected surprise where they end up, oh, it wasn't anything like what I thought it was going to be. And hopefully better. What are the options? So what type of support? What does it look like, sound like, feel like? What information could I give you today that might help you? And then what bits do you feel comfortable doing and confident to be able to do at the moment? What things do you think I could help you with and maybe take some of that burden and ease that for you as a support worker? So we look at what are the options around there as the next step in that process. We find out through our compassionate inquiry, and it's non-judgmental, we establish that, okay, so we've got a bit of a plan. Would that be something that we put in of a priority of need? And then we discuss that, and then we reach an agreement. And it really is client-centric. So our client is driving what that support is. But if it goes outside what you're funded to deliver or the organisation can deliver, you just say, that's actually not something that we do, but we have a great stakeholder relationship. And I can find out if they've got capacity to take on another client. If I could, would that be something that you would like me to do? So it just depends on what the story is for the client. So when we give you an assessment, we're giving you a story. And of course, it isn't that person's name. That would be a breach of privacy, but they're all very real. I like to put some scenarios in that I bring from my workplace and our live classes. They like to bring some of those into the from the workspace into classes as well, all de-identified. And of course, what's said in a live class stays in that live class. Even if we have another learner shares a lived experience, we keep that inside. That's our respectful professional boundary that we have in our live class space. That's why oftentimes we won't record a live class. We want people to feel really comfortable. If we were in a classroom face-to-face, we make this as experiential as we can in live classes. However, this will be more around assessment focus, sequencing, and then what that might look like to be able to get that unit passed for you. In the meantime, though, of course, you can reach out to learner support and they will assist you. There's another role play there for you. I want you to, I don't record those because of copyright, but that is for you. So this is around duty of care, making sure that we've done that assessment and the safety and the risk around that as well. So you as a worker have a duty of care to yourself, to your peers, the reputation of the organisation, but primarily to your client. Mandatory reporting is what we start with. So we say if there's anything that I thought maybe you were at risk or safety to self and others, we would work with that. And I will continue to reinforce that throughout. So when I do my intake, I will always say what we say, and you might have your own script, but before we get started, I want to let you know that everything you say here is private and confidential. And what that means is that I won't be discussing this with anybody, no matter what. The only time where there is an exception to that is if I have to report something because it is about the safety for you or the safety of others. But you'll be part of that. I'll let you know. And we'll do this together. And sometimes when I'm doing that reporting, we may actually do that reporting together. But for me, mandatory reporting is that I would let my supervisor know. So if you're a learner that's just starting out, this burden of responsibility, that is not on you. You will be protected by policies and procedures. You will have a protocol to follow in your workplace. For me, I have a professional supervisor because I am the last person to report to in my role during the day when I'm in the sector, and people report to me, but I still have to make sure that I'm checking in with someone, that my lens isn't skewed, that I haven't got a perception going on, and I need to just have someone check in with me that I'm traveling okay. So mandatory reporting is if we've got a dilemma where we go, oh, I don't know whether to report this or not, reporting to your line manager or your supervisor, that then is taken out of your hands. But you've got policies and procedures that sit in your organisation, and there will be a duty of care and a reporting requirement. So different organisations have different requirements for mandatory reporting. I'm based in Queensland. So Queensland, we refer to them as tier 1 providers. A tier 1 provider is police, GPs, nurses, teachers, child safety, different departments, domestic family violence, funded organisations, sexual assault services. However, if that risk is no longer there, and this is an historical matter, one of the assessments we do is, are you safe now? And if we go into this a little further and they say, no, this happened to me 5 years ago, but it's still sitting with me, that may be the work that we're doing. So mandatory reporting is a requirement if there is a risk to harm to self and others. I like to bring in ambulance because usually that sits around mental health, and then they will do the next reporting themselves if they need to. So you will have workplace policies and procedures informing the police. There'll be protocols, and you'll even have timelines on when you must do that by. What's an indicator of harm, neglect, or abuse? It could be emotional or psychological, physical, sexual, financial, emotional, or psychologically emotional. Again, I don't know why we've got that there twice, but that can be around capacity. And then again, the emotional, psychological around the physical harm to self and harm to others, if we look at that in the context of that. Sexual can be gender, financial as well. So vulnerable populations are minority groups or marginalised groups. Here we're referring to young people, but this could be of any age. There is no limit on age of when somebody may or may not be subjected to abuse. The category up to the age 65 sits in under domestic family violence. Over 65, it can be referred to as elder abuse, which is a different law, but they are aligned. So there's a different way to report that. The benefit of that is that there's advocates for youth, there's advocates for other areas, and then there's advocates for people over the age of 65. Just wanted to clarify that yes, who do I go to? So if it's a young person, we'd go to the police and it would automatically go to the vulnerable persons unit. And inside that vulnerable persons unit is a team of people. So domestic family violence, subject matter experts in youth, AMBOs, child safety. We are an alliance of first responders. So depending on your knowledge and your skills and the extra study, you'll find your niche, the area that really speaks to you. And there'll be more than one throughout your career in the community service sectors. So if someone is more vulnerable, they could be groomed. And there's quite a lot of data I want you to explore for yourself around who is a vulnerable person and who would be someone with very high and complex needs. So we look for signs of abuse. Child safety have their own as well. But look, these aren't limited, but it's a change in behaviour of mood. If it's a small child, things like starting, to wet themselves or wet the bed when they had been toilet trained or were going through. And it could be they have no control over their physical response to an emotional thing. Changes, you might see bumps and scratches, abrasions, and enough for you to observe it and just make a mental note, and then explore that gently in that space and ask about that. Broken bones, flinching, being touched, exaggerated responses to loud sounds or raised voices. Now, these aren't definite because you can have a neurodivergent person who can be startled very easily. That is actually one of the indicators for ND. However, it's also an indicator for someone with complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So we're not diagnosing, we're not guessing, we're observing. That's something that's a sign. I'll just look at that as an indicator and I'll start to make my notes accordingly. So missing appointments and low self-confidence, fear of strangers or a distrust of all people, a flat depression, which of course on the flip side of depression is anxiety. That is one coin, both sides. Withdrawal, difficulty walking or sitting, watching somebody, and then signs of self-harm. And then that heightened vigilance, like making sure that everything is okay, and it's indifferent to OCD. So it's more about always on the lookout, that fight, flight, survival instinct, which would be very heightened. They can be signs of abuse. So vulnerable populations around domestic violence or domestic family violence, because the law now is from sibling to sibling, young person to parent. So if you've got a young person perhaps that's grown up around domestic family violence, they can go from victim to offender as they start to get older because they haven't had that therapeutic support to be able to deal with it. Just that person that was the offender leaving the home does not mean that everything is okay, especially as a lot of parents don't realise that if they talk about those things in front of their children, that is viewed as ongoing abuse by the remaining parent, even though they may parentify their children or rely on them or have those discussions in front of them. That is actually not a burden that we put on to vulnerable people or young people. It can be very overwhelming for a listener. So that's why people will go to a professional. And if you can't help someone, then refer them on to a specialist in that field. We just need to be able to walk beside our clients and help them find the right people to wrap around that support for them. So just keeping an eye out for some of those exaggerated signs, what we call our indicators. There are signs of neglect. Some are visible, some are around socioeconomic, sitting in that lower scale. Stealing food is a big one in young people, or an older person will neglect eating, put others before themselves. What happens to a child after they suffer sexual abuse? That's a video for you to watch. So I just need you to be really mindful when you're watching some of the resources here, because they're really complex needs that we're responding to. And so make sure that you look after yourself. If ever you struggle with any of the topics that we cover or any of the work that you do, make sure that you contact Lifeline. They're used to students contacting them, 13, 11, 14, 24/7 and free. They have the postcodes of wherever if you decide to share where they are, they can say, look, there's some services in your local area that you could speak to. Some people like to stay anonymous, and they can do that with a Lifeline call. If your clients are looking for someone to talk to and they can only see you for an hour once a week, that in the meantime, giving them those resources is very important. Their life does not go on hold for the whole week before you're seeing them again for 1 hour. So we are resourcing our clients. We're giving them agency to advocate on their own behalf, and we're that soft place to land. So some of those indicators are looking for the signs. Yeah. Children's drawings are often indicators as well, colours that they choose as well. So I have a different I have a different email to that, but let me just share that for us. And you can see behind me here on the screen, L, lowercase l, SO, stands for Learner Support Officer at haiderinstitute.edu.au. And of course, every trainer at Haider, because we work at nights, you may or may not get your trainer with an email, but always go to your Learner Support Officers first. We're going to take a short break and then we'll come back into this recording. So you take a short break too. So we're back. I'm going to do the second part of our recording and just get that screen sorted. Apologise. Here we are. Wonderful. Clear that screen for us. So the second part of it, of this is just me going through the slides for you again. I have done our acknowledgement to country and our housekeeping. Just an overview of where we were, clients' needs, working within the legislation that we must do, discrimination, disability, human rights, privacy and confidentiality, workplace health and safety, the organisation's policies and procedures, and then what's our referral process? How do we follow those protocols to build a support group around our client? We ask questions intentionally and with compassion and empathy. We gather that information and we use a range of different assessment tools as well. So our communication skills in the sector, we refer to them as micro skills or practitioner skills. So we get you to do your studies. 60% is your written theory, academic key learning, and 40% is your practitioner skills, and we refer to them as role plays. We can do them live in classes if your trainer offers that. Otherwise, there's quite a lot of them that you do on your own and record them. In our Discord and in your announcements, in your porthole, there's a full suite of role-play resources. Some we've prepared earlier, do's and don'ts. What if you get it sent back because you forgot something, how to do a part 2, and just submit that bit again so you don't have to do it all over. So there's lots and lots of resources there to help you. And then, of course, you've got trainers and assessors that will assist as well. So when you're communicating with your client, your peers, and in the workplace, selecting the language that's appropriate for our client, we're patient and we take notes. Your notes need to be statements rather than subjective. So the client stated and the client appeared to be, because we aren't clinical workers, so we're not making a diagnosis, and your file notes can be subpoenaed to appear before a court. So we don't write anything in our case notes that would you wouldn't be comfortable for your client to be reading. The file belongs to the client ultimately, and we need to make sure that we're professional. So it's our communication isn't just what we do or say, it is also what we write and our record as well. We establish rapport and trust. We're culturally appropriate and we practice our active listening skills. If we were in class, we would be doing some of those demonstrations live, but we give you some recordings and you can watch some people in other role plays do that as well. Culture and religion is about cultural sensitivities. So you'll notice on my screen that I sit on Tarrabalang Bundaland. And so where is your land, and how would you approach working with clients from different cultures? So that's First Nation, but we have a blended family, so we have Turkish in our family as well. So it really just depends on what kind of awareness you've got and experience, and making sure that we make our adjustments so we can respond to meet our clients' needs, and to make ourselves more accessible and our supports more accessible and ultimately safer for our clients to access. So we need to have that awareness as the professionals. If we don't know, then we need to find out how best to serve our clients and making sure that they feel safe in our company and our supports. It can be personal space as well, and even touching and eye contact. Is that culturally safe for that person? Hand gestures, non-verbal nodding, and polite conversation, which might be just surface conversation, meet and greet. And we practice doing some of that in our live classes. How do we make informed decisions, and can a client make informed decisions around their mental health, their disabilities, alcohol or drugs, prescription drugs, taking their drugs, not taking their drugs that are prescribed for them, that dignity of risk where the client may know that it's better for them to not be smoking. However, we don't make a judgment about that. Even if our clients are using illicit drugs, then again, it is not our place to make that judgment call, because we're working with their mental health and their physical health, their emotional health, their financial health. And that's the space that we sit in there. The only time where this may come up for us would be if you felt unsafe as a worker. And then what's the risk assessment in the space that you're in? So we only work to the ability that we feel confident, and if it's outside our position description and the scope of our role. So there can be quite a dilemma depending on what I've been in roles where, like, even though I'm trained to do suicide intervention, I can work for an organisation and they will not want me to do that. So the only time I might step in there would be if it was an urgent matter, but I could call 000, and then I would respond like I would a first aid person. That would be appropriate as well. But if it's not my role and I'm not employed to be a suicide intervention worker, then I need to follow the protocols of the organisation that I'm working for. So let's say we work in the community service sector, we teach community, all of the areas around community services and youth work and mental health and AOD, but we do counselling, we do casework, but we don't do that with our learners in our community. So that's our healthy professional boundary. When we talk to you about this, we're talking to you that you will learn to do this rather than us do that with you. So our approach is around passing our skills on for you to be able to do that. And you will learn and watch people, how they do their active listening, their compassionate inquiry, their reflecting back on some questions and have I got that right? Just checking in. So communication is something that you can do, and your why for studying will often be because people do already find that easy to talk to you about things. It may be something about you that you've heard before, but it might be something that drives you to want to be able to be in that space and support people. So to make an informed decision for our clients is that they need information that's relevant. They may not know the questions even to ask. So that's our role, to explore that with our compassionate inquiry. We do that with our open-ended questions, which are filled with who, what, how, when, where, and why. What are our services and what are some of our stakeholder partner services, and walk beside our clients while they make choices. And we practice that, of course. So when we share information, we make sure it's current, it's relevant, and it's accessible. So it's got to be up to date. Laws change, and we need to make sure that we're staying ahead of all of that. And if I'm looking at maybe referring someone on to, let's say it's accommodation, or I want to get some counselling, I'll often make a phone call after I speak to the client and we find out what it is. So leave that with me and let me just find out who might have something available, what we've spoken about today. But I work in the sector, so if I've got any vacancies in our accommodation in community housing, then I have an email tree and I say, look, we've got a vacancy coming up in 2 weeks. If you've got a client that would like to apply, then we put it out there. So that's my up-to-date message, and building on those stakeholders if something comes up less and less, because it's harder and harder to find somewhere around housing, but that's nationwide. That's not necessarily just in my region. And oftentimes you don't have to work in housing, but if we look at our hierarchy of need, our Maslow's hierarchy of need, shelter is the very first thing, shelter and food, and our safety. So examples of what interrelationships are: domestic family violence, homelessness, mental health, and financial hardship. They're the things that when someone comes in through the door, if they say they're looking for accommodation, well, there's a mental health impact here. Why are they leaving? Have they been fleeing for safety? And then are they in a position where they have got financial instability at the moment? So accessing those services and supports. And then who might our referrals go to? Also thinking about our clients that may have chronic health issues, especially invisible health issues. Like not all disabilities are visible. So we need to be quite sensitive when we step into that space. There's a lot of stigma and labels that get applied to people around things like intergenerational need to have social services support around financial assistance, homelessness, domestic violence, long-term unemployed, and personal trauma or other mental health issues and cultural issues. So that labelling is something that can happen to a person, that can wear them down. So we need to make sure that we create a soft place to land that's safe, psychologically and physically safe, and reliable, where they can establish that trust and you can build a professional relationship with them, build rapport. So we talk about, this is what I would do. I'd engage with them, and I'd build rapport, I'd use active listening. But how do you do that? What's the action attached to that? So in theory, we know, but what does that look like when we're actually doing that? So watch a couple of those videos if you can't make it to live classes. In classes, we do that. That is our whole class in action, how we work together. However, the role plays and the recordings we've left for you in your resources, there's some great ones there. And even in this recording, again, there's some great ones there. So watch those and watch some of your TEDx talks. I can recommend Taming My Advice Monster. Love that one. Michael Bungay is great. So, of course, the legislation. So our legal, which is definitely there. Every policy and procedure that you have in an organisation is underneath the legislation. So privacy and confidentiality is law, 1988, the Privacy Act. However, your policies and procedures are around how do we manage someone's privacy and how do we manage that confidentiality? How do we work around the disclosing of information, which sits in our mandatory reporting? And then who can we share that with and how do we share that? And it must be with consent and informed consent. And we walk our way through that in class. Human rights, which of course the Human Rights Commission is there. I recommend that you go to the Human Rights Commission's page and do the NDIS worker orientation screening. That's fabulous around access and disability. It's free, takes about 1.5 hours. It's performed by clients, and there's a little interactive test for you to do. A lot of places will want that NDIS worker screening orientation, whether you have a yellow card or an NDIS card, working with vulnerable people or not. So you can go to the Human Rights Commission site and do that test for yourself. You can even go into the child safety services in some states and territories. So make sure that your research goes to your state or territory. So we have national or Commonwealth law, which is legislated, but then you might have your state or territory law. And it is on us to know which laws apply in our state or territory as our worker. That is definitely our responsibility. If we're breaching confidentiality, our clients won't trust us. Even if you're just talking to another worker, you are talking about them. And so we have a practice where we never do. And if I talk about a client in class, it will only be because it already is a public matter anyway. But you might, in your local area, have some situations that are also public information around working with vulnerable people. So we are limiting the options and opportunities for our clients if we breach that confidentiality and their trust, and it affects our working relationship. So our policies and procedures sit underneath the legislation, and you cannot have a policy or procedure that's in direct contrast to what the law requires. So policies and procedures are created by the organisation. The legislation is written into law and passed by government. So follow, share, model, regularly review, and that is your legal requirement. So as an employee, so you sign a contract, whether you are paid or unpaid as a volunteer, and you'll do an orientation and you will revisit your policies and procedures. For the purpose of your study, we give you a simulated workplace that has lots of policy and procedures, and we call that and go in there and capture some of those and do some research. It's a great site, actually. When it was up, we had a week it was down, and I didn't know, what to do myself in that space. So we just paused everything. But you do absolutely rely on policies and procedures. I like them. I like reading them. Each year, organisations often review them, and they ask their workers to hear it from the bottom up. We've got these policies and procedures, but are they effective, and would you change anything in them? So it's called policy review. If there's something that isn't quite working, then it is our responsibility to let somebody know, I just want to raise this, that this policy, I think we've been to a course and it's changed as well. Often people will only apply certain practices if they have a client or clients that fit in that particular target group, but we really do need to be ready for that rather than reactive. We need to be proactive, and that's part of our ongoing professional development. So we document our clients' options in their case plan. We clarify what the next steps are. I will do this, you will do that. Which bits of these can you do? Which bits do you want me to take care of? And when will we do that? That's our strategy. And we reach an agreement. Okay, so this is what's going to happen. Now, if the client doesn't do that, that's fine. It's like, how did you go when you went to Centrelink? If that was one of the things they were going to do. Look, Vicky, I parked outside and I just couldn't walk in. Okay, all right. So what was happening? I don't know. I just can't walk in through the door. So what would that be like if I came with you? Would that make it easier, I wonder? Yeah. Okay, great. So just even accessing mainstream services, don't for any moment think that the client can do that easily or readily, because we need to respond to their needs. We'll only know whether they can do that. We can offer that, we can suggest that, but do we actually know that our client can do that? That they have capacity to do that, that they have the cognitive to do that, that they aren't trauma impacted, that they didn't have a bad experience last time, that they're not walking in with shame around literacy and numeracy. Our prison system is full of people who cannot read and write. And that is a secret they hold on to. They've got lots of different ways to make sure you don't find that secret out as well. So that's a coping mechanism as well, but there's a lot of shame in that. There's many times throughout their day where they are excluded and isolated because of what it is that is happening for them. So services and eligibility. So not everybody is eligible to access all services. So if you're working in youth is 12 to 24. But your service model might say we only work with 16 to 21, which is most youth refuges. But some people have services at top and tail, and some will go right up to Gen Y, which is 34, and if they're a young parent. So it just depends. And it depends on the organisation that you're in as well. So you need to know what their service model is, their performance framework is that they must deliver according to their funding, if it's not a public service, and if it is a public service, working within the guidelines that are statutory. Does it cost to access that support? And then what are some alternatives? So we, in live class, would look at what are the limitations. We find out referrals. The best referral is we talk about it, we get information, we make decisions and we check it out. And if it's not a good referral, that's on the client to make those decisions. How did that go? I didn't like it. They judged me when I went in. So it's like, well, that's really uncomfortable. I'm sorry that you experienced that. Would you give it another go, or it's a no, like a firm no? Yep. Okay. All right. So let's scrap that. We're always reviewing that space. Or what was it about it? See if you could go specific with it. Well, yeah, like my ex goes there. Okay, great. I understand that. Or I just felt like they were judging me. There were all these other people. Well, that could be a self-confidence or a low self-esteem because our client has been through something and they are vulnerable and they are feeling exposed as well. So we may contact the service. We will document that we did. We may share the details that we have consent to do, and we will evaluate whether that's a good service, and the client will let us know. We'll do some research when we're in classes, but that wraps up our part of it. What I wanted to do next was just ignore Angelique's email. Just put viki@hayderinstitute.edu.au. But of course, go to LSO and you can leave a 5-star review for your trainers, regardless of who is delivering this for you. You absolutely can leave a 5-star review for your trainers, and that comes from our learner community and gets fed up to our management team. Let's just pause here for a moment. I'll take you over to our assessments. I just wanted to walk you through task 2. So task 1 is a quiz, and you can go through and look at those questions. Try and get your task 1 done in week 1, and then work on task 2. And task 2 could take you the remaining 2 weeks for you to be aligned with your studies. So you can see the unit in the portal. It says CHCCCS016 task 2 of 3, meaning there's 3 tasks. But at the beginning of our recording, I told you that task 3 is work placement. So for this one, while you're doing your studies, once you've done task 1 and completed task 2, you move on to your next unit. So the very first one is your client. So what we do, so this is just a brief overview about responding to clients' needs. You will need to go into your First Access site. You'll need to know about collecting and analysing client information policy. In your porthole, that will be a link you can click on. Responding to indicators of actual or potential risk of abuse, neglect or harm policy. Transitioning or exiting a client from the service. So we have our intake and assessment, and then we have that we're at the end of, and it depends on the service model, how long you keep a client for. So your client may come in once and you never see them again. It just depends. You may have a single service occasion of service only. You may have bed nights that you measure how long you work with somebody. It just depends. Some people can have 6 sessions and then a review and come back and have 6 more sessions. So it really is about where you're working, what your job is, what that organisation offers as part of the role. So we try and make every moment just have a stop and an end, but the period of time we work with someone will depend on the service model and then how engaged they feel working with us. So there are clients who will shop around until they find the exact worker that they feel is a really good fit for them. In our classes, we do talk about what are some of those micro skills, what helps us feel comfortable talking with somebody, what do you need? And I like to do soft contracts with my clients. How would I know if you're comfortable? How would I know if you're angry with me? Oh, you'd know it all right. So, okay, so that'll be really clear. Good. But it isn't always for everyone. So it's a real getting to know you. And sometimes we've got to take that feedback from our clients, and like if there's anything I'm doing that you're not comfortable with, you can feed that up. You can ask for a different worker. This is about us giving you the support that you need. I can even look at our caseload and go, look, I think that would be a better fit for this worker in my team. I only have a small team outside of Hader. So when I work in that space, I might pick, it might depend also on how many complex clients they're working with. I don't want to overwhelm them. Or I might take some of the ones that are a lighter caseload and ease that for them. So if we have 5, 25 is good if we're working with people over a long period of time. But if you're first worker or you move into the employment sector and do casework and client manager work in there, you could have a 300 caseload. And it still is file notes, it's still reporting, still with a focus on reaching an outcome, but it's a different model. So youth residential housing, also again a different model. So it depends. There's so many different roles that you could work in, depending on what kind of worker you want to be, what kind of jobs you want to go for, whether you want a promotion. If you're already working in the sector, your diploma could get you seen to be able to be considered as doing team lead or program manager or acting in some of those roles if something comes up internally for you. So make sure that you look at the scope of, say, First Access, and then look at what is required. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the link is in there. The reason why I say that is it's going to be one of your assessment things that we mark on with our role plays. So with our role play here, we have, we're working with Erica as well. So it gives us a story. So she's a victim of domestic violence. She has been with her partner for 15 years, off and on. He's always been abusive to her. They moved to this local area where you're working 6 months ago, and she thought that a change of location would be good for them, but he has started to be violent again. So it says here that your assessor will play the role of Erica. However, that is not the case. It does mean an assessor will be there with you, but you will do that with a peer. if you want an exception to that, you need to double check. It cannot be with family or friends unless they are a sector worker, because this topic is quite sensitive, and we need you to have a person who is authentically playing that client. So family members reading off a script can get us through some role plays because we're just assessing you, but with this one, no. This one, it definitely needs that higher level. So when it says your assessor will play the role of Erica, it means your assessor will be there, and we could do that in class. Or if you don't come to classes, you can ask for a peer and go to Discord, and then that will be, I really need to have an assessor with us. So the information it gives you about Erica, there's a range of services you could do referrals to. And this will be about you doing intake and assessment, and then working with Erica around some of those needs and responding to those, and going through the rights that she has to be treated professionally, treated equally, that information gained about her would only be used for the purpose of that and nothing else. And she would be part of that. Her privacy will be respected. May choose the services that she wishes to access, and also choose not to. And she can leave the program at any time. She has full say over that, and would be encouraged to participate in all the decision making about the services, and access and how you receive them. And then at the end of the service that you will do that transition and the exit process, and you can be assured that if there's anything she wasn't happy with, that she could make a complaint and it would be investigated fairly as well. And then we go through what the client's responsibilities are. And we explain all of this, and that's what we want in your role play. In the second part of the role play, it talks to us next about Erica leaving the service. And she was housed firstly in emergency accommodation, then in temporary accommodation. That's what she first came in with. That was her priority of need. And we responded to those needs. And now that she's in more permanent rental accommodation, and it's been allocated to Erica and her family, the offending partner was actually found guilty of assault. So this is the story, and is serving 8 years in prison. So it must have been a serious violent crime under the domestic violence legislation for that to happen. And it's also very rare. And her children have now been found to have some developmental needs and delays, and these are being delivered through the school, but they may also need to have other service providers around that. And Erica has found part-time work in a motel close to her accommodation. This and her Centrelink hours allow her to have improved financial independence. So that's how we're doing the summary at the end of that. And there are two. So the first one is around task 1, which is a quiz, and it talks about the content in your slides, what I'm discussing with you here, and then also in your learner's guide. So just in closing, I wanted to wrap up and say thank you. That is the resource that we have. Please watch some of those videos. And then, of course, if we've got something happening in our live classes, and I think that could be beneficial, then I'll do short recordings and I'll send that out. Some of that will be some role play. So, but just know that this one you need to make sure that an assessor is present. If for some reason you need that to be an assessor, we will have a look at it, but it would be done in a group anyway. So, so if you can't make it to classes, then we can create an opportunity. Every second Wednesday and every second Saturday morning, we try and open that up for extra role plays if you can't make it to class, but we still offer you something out of hours and hopefully at a time that you can do that. So please don't park your role plays. You're not finished a unit until you've done every task in them. So this one has 2 tasks. Task 1 is a quiz, questions, and task 2 is your role play. And there are 2 parts to that role play, and you'll need to practice those and make sure that you're in contact with peers. And then you will play the client for them and they will play the client for you. So you'll both be getting assessed at the same time. Okay, so thanks everybody. It's a great unit. It's part of your core skill. It's definitely something that we practice each and every time. So your role plays, the more you do, the better you get. And I encourage you, even if you've done this role play, to jump in and be the client for somebody else as well. You will feel a lot more confident in that space if you can. Thanks, everybody. And that's the end of our key learning and our pre-recorded that you'll get to keep in your own library of resources.